Please. Let's give it just one more minute and then let's get this started. You are wrapping us up. We started at 5 a.m. my time, so the sun is
Wow.
starting to make its way in through the afternoon here. But all right, everybody, people are pouring in from all over the world. We just went from our all Spanish speaking panel to two beautiful human beings from all around the world as well. I think that's been some of the most fun. Is we really wanted to be sure we highlighted the diversity in surf therapy and the inclusion and of course the equality. And we've had panels from removing sexism to how do we build a pathway to inclusion, and from speakers everywhere. So it's just been dynamic. I'm going to get this started. I have the great pleasure of introducing both Martina and Easkey. Welcome, everybody, and everybody trickling in. This is our final keynote. We are very excited. Martina is the co-founder and director of the social force Sea Sister Sri Lanka. Martina, I have been stalking you on Instagram for a long time. It strives to be more inclusive and responsible surf community. Martina went to Sri Lanka in 2017 to complete research from her master's thesis, Women Making Waves, exploring the potential of surfing for women's empowerment. Martina, I'm not sure if you know, but ISTO has a fairly comprehensive bibliography on our website, and we would love to include your paper at any time. If you'd like to email me that, we will add it to it. There's so much more to Martina, and we can't wait to hear about you and your important work. Gosh, Dr. Easkey Britton. Oh boy, do you need an introduction? I'm not worthy. Easkey is a forever academic. Let's just be honest. She is an Irish surfer with a doctorate in environment and society, and in 2010 won her 5th consecutive Irish National Surfing Championship title at her namesake wave. Yes, her father named her after his favorite wave, Easkey, in Ireland, and it doesn't get much cooler than that. She's a scientist, a researcher, an environmentalist, and an author, and so much more. Welcome. It's truly an honor to have you both, extraordinary women, as our keynote speakers to close us out. 2 days, 14 sessions at the 2020 ISTO Symposium. So I'm going to stop talking, let you do your thing, and let you do your magic. Thanks so much for being here.
Amazing. Chris, thank you so much for having us. And it's such an honor. It's been an incredible journey. I've been dipping in and out of the conversations and talks, and it's been so inspiring. I'm really excited to share this panel session with Martina and kind of collectively our body of work in this area around restoring the ocean as a safe and healing space for women and girls spans the last sort of 12 to 15 years. And this is very special for us because this is the first time we're kind of presenting, well, first time we're co-presenting, first time we're presenting this kind of first stab, first draft at bringing our work together. And I'm working on a paper actually for a Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health next year. So it's just a really great opportunity to be able to bounce it off you guys and get feedback as well. And a little bit of context for how we're going to roll with it this evening. Well, it's this evening here in Ireland. Yeah, just I wanted to explore through our own work how we've been working to restore the ocean as a safe and healing space for women and girls. And so I want to first give that a bit of context and then kind of share a kind of, I suppose, a snapshot or one taste of our case studies, both with work I've done previously with women surfing in Iran and Martina's work in Sri Lanka, and how those surf programs help create this enabling and inclusive space. And then you probably don't know if you can hear the wild storm outside as well. And then to conclude, we're going to just draw on what some of those key enabling factors are that we've discovered and some insights, as well as drawing on participant experiences. So we've also had the contribution of women and girls from Sri Lanka in Iran who videoed some pieces to share with you guys this evening. So hopefully that all works as well. And if I can share my screen, that'll be even better. Martina, is there anything you want to say before we kind of dive right in?
Well, actually, I want to say thank you too. Feeling very honored being here today and just super excited of sharing stage with you today. Being a constant inspiration, and yeah, I can't wait to kick this off. Great, your screen works.
Good. So everyone can see this. This is actually, of all the Zoom calls I've done, it's the first time I've shared screen. We're good. Okay. Yeah, so we'll just dive right in. And first of all, I just wanted to, we both want to acknowledge that this presentation builds on and draws on the collective wisdom of so many women and girls who participated and contributed to this work, but also we've kind of drawn and build upon a really important body of work spanning critical feminist theory, critical surf studies that Dina mentioned yesterday, blue health, ocean human health, really emerging as this kind of meta discipline, intersectionality. And so we just wanted to sort of spotlight that so much is happening in this space. It's evolving really rapidly. And what we're sharing with you this evening draws on some of our own work that we've published in different publications like Living with the Sea and Palgrave's Handbook on Feminism in Sport. And just that there are conversations happening across sort of not only in practice, but also in academia and evidencing the impact of this work and the work that we're all doing, which is really exciting. Yeah, and also these are our co-creators. So from Iran, we'll introduce them all a little bit later, and they'll share in their own voices what it means to them to be a woman who surfs today in their country, and also from Sri Lanka. So we look forward to introducing you to them. And just to kind of I guess, situate our work in the wider context of what's happening when we think about women in the ocean and look at that through a gender lens and our relationship with the ocean. We just wanted to kind of spotlight how, you know, the UN had this call for action in World Ocean Day last year for gender equality, recognizing that gender equality is the equal valuing by society of both the similarities and the differences between women and men and the different roles they play, but that there's concerted action needed across all ocean sectors, I mean, including water sports, to address inequalities. And what we wanted to highlight here was that I guess the ocean is, for so many women and girls, still a really unsafe, risky space. Women are far more at risk from the impact of things like climate change and natural disasters, conflict, and these risks are heightened than in coastal regions. Just sort of one statistic here to highlight in the infographic is that women and children are 14 times more likely to die or be injured or drown in natural disasters. And I know that's had a huge impact in places, for example, like Sri Lanka as well. And this is due to also due to the unequal access to resources, as well as like water-based life skills for women and girls. And then just the general, like, kind of the invisibility of women in the ocean space is that much more than our visibility on land, especially in decision-making and science. But what is kind of, I think, exciting, and again, as Dina said yesterday, like, surf culture is evolving. So, you know, too often women have been portrayed as this homogenous whole in surf media, but there is increasing visibility of women, and especially recognition of the diversity of what it means to be a woman who surfs. And then these more diverse representations, we're starting to see them because women are rewriting the narrative of women surfing and women's surf history. Just a few examples here on this slide would be Lauren Hill's recent book, She Surf, is a really excellent take on women surfing history, as well as contemporary female surfers. So in our work, we're really seeking to address the so-called invisibility and support access, inclusion, and greater participation. What also informs our work, I just wanted to highlight a kind of a few key concepts without getting too weighed down. But I feel like this is really important to what we're speaking to today, and it's intersectionality. So this, what does that mean? This recognition that all oppression is connected, and as Audre Lorde so wonderfully put it, civil rights activist, that there's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we don't live single issue lives. And for me, as someone who plays multiple roles, both as, you know, surfer, researcher, practitioner, this is really important for me to recognize too. But basically implying an intersectional approach helps identify the root of various inequalities and assess potential impacts, be they positive or negative, of interventions. And it's just essential to recognize that, for women have multiple and diverse identities, as do all people. But these are factors then that intersect to shape our perspectives, our ideologies, and our experiences. And this is really important to consider when we start thinking about agency, like that power or freedom to choose, and how that can actually be very constrained by how these factors intersect in our lives. And also just wanted to spotlight how when we speak of empowerment, it's such a loaded term, but we mean not power over, but power in. So that capacity to transform, to self-author one's own image, whilst acknowledging those inherent power dynamics at play in this, patriarchal society. And the other kind of concept we really draw upon and build on and align with is blue health, or, so synonymous with Walsh J. Nichols' Blue Mind, that as he presented last year. But I love that there's now a dictionary definition of blue health. So the idea of being near on water is good for physical and mental health. As we all know. And just wanted to spotlight that it's also gaining so much momentum around policy and academia. And these are two, Blue Health and the Sophie project, which you see on the right, are two EU-funded projects linking climate, health, and the ocean. And so we're starting to see the ocean come in much more in the context of recognizing it's important for public health, which is kind of so timely given where we're at right now in the world with the pandemic. And my work has also been then sort of kind of evidence through things like systematic reviews, as well as working with surf therapy organizations, the kind of blue care factor, so that therapeutic benefit. And then just, I guess, acknowledging that this work builds on what Indigenous cultures have always known in practice, and the fact that women are water keepers and water protectors. So that although this is kind of new concept within academia and as a meta discipline, it's been there for millennia. Yeah. And what does that look like then when it manifests in a place like Iran? So this is one aspect of the kind of evolution or emergence and evolution of surfing in Iran that I want to spotlight on for this evening is Be Like Water. So this program that is, the aim of it is really to look at how might we restore the ocean as this safe, inclusive space for women and girls in the context of Iran. But I also think it has applicability, everywhere. So what I'm kind of going to do now is give just a really brief context of what is such a complex, rich story that keeps evolving off this kind of emergence of surfing in Iran, women's role in surfing in the country, my role with this work, and then the actual purpose and process of the Be Like Water program itself, followed by perspectives from women and girls right now that I think really spotlight the importance of things like mentoring and role models, and family support, as well as external support and resources from the likes of the ISA scholarship program, of which a few of the Iranian surf girls are recipients. Yeah, very briefly, because these feel like all such huge topics. But I just wanted to take a step back and also flag this really fantastic new report by Nida Ahmed and Holly Thorpe on building cultural inclusion in sport and recreation from the perspective of Muslim women. And again, recognizing that there are such a diverse group. So the report identified that attitudes and cultural misunderstandings in the sports sector is the greatest barrier for women's participation. So that kind of really highlights that need to question assumptions and stereotypes and how we might break that down and better understand motivations and opportunities that women have to serve. And also the importance of which we'll spotlight a little bit later on, of cross-cultural collaborations that kind of move us toward best practice. And what's also interesting happening this kind of, I suppose, rise of the visibility of Muslim women in sport from the previous Rio Olympics, no doubt the next Olympics, even the Nike sports hijab coming out the last year or so. But that water sports still remain an issue, especially when it comes to appropriate performance sportswear, which we'll also see a little bit later on. But to give it just some context of where exactly I'm talking about, especially when it comes to where surfing is happening. So the emergence of surfing is so recent as a sign of this, it's very like a nascent surf culture in Iran since 2013. And there's probably like a lot of reasons for that. So geographically speaking, what you can see here is the outline of Iran. The first pin drop in the north is Tehran, the capital city. And then over in the corner in the southeastern region of Sistan, Baluchistan, right next to the border of Pakistan, is where the surfing going to happen. So it's very remote, isolated region, home to marginalized ethnic minority. And this very, very small but stunning stretch of ocean wave exposed coastline that you can see also illustrated here with these incredible mountains. So just to put it in context in terms of the size and the accessibility we're talking about, there is a sea trade port there and some villages, but the main urban centers like the capital city of Tehran, it's a 2.5-hour flight between these parts. And of course there's surfing happening in the Caspian Sea too, but we're focusing on open ocean wave surfing. It's kind of, it's so, I've never given a presentation like this before where I feel like I'm talking in a bubble to my slides. So it'll be nice to engage with everyone at the end of this. Yeah, it's so fascinating what is actually happening in Iran. You have this incredible board sports culture happening, in particular in snowboarding and skateboarding. What I wanted to just flag here, you see Mona Siraji with her surfboard. She's Iran's first female snowboard instructor, and then became one of Iran's first female surfers, along with Shala Yassini. So both of them are kind of pointing to this sort of, their draw to do these kind of sports is also the chance to self-actualize, that freedom to express themselves and who they want to be, and yet how that can be constrained in terms of also in Iran having to be fully covered, have the head covered, especially when it comes to being in water and in the surf and being tossed around. And the other thing I wanted to just spotlight here before moving on is that there's this kind of more huge sort of urban youth population that's very, very liberal, wealthier, very engaged on social media in terms of knowledge exchange and the visual identity being really, really important, which is fascinating. So I think Instagram, per capita Instagram followers in Iran is some of the highest in the world, despite other social media platforms being banned. But there is a huge class divide between urban and rural. So you see in some of these other images illustrating more rural parts where spaces and lives are very gendered. And public spaces anyways are very gendered in Iran. And so that just means as a woman, you're constantly, there's, self-monitoring, judgment, male gaze, this sense of being very exposed or watched if you are taking part in something in a public space. I won't get a chance to play it now, but this the kind of origin story is captured in a brilliant documentary I made along with Mariam Poiseau, the director, in 2013 with Mona and Shala. So it basically documents how surfing was first initiated by women, called Into the Sea. It's available on different platforms, including Vimeo on demand. But that will really kind of immerse you in a sense of place if you get a chance to watch it, or even the trailer. And so it's just incredible how rapidly it's been evolving, and how surfing, when we first went to this beach called Ramin, the three of us, and it was the first time people had seen surfing. So there was no one surfing there beforehand. And it was adopted and welcomed by this rural Baluch fishing community, by an ethnic minority community. And it's just incredible. This acceptance then was born out of there's a wonderful moment in the film where a young boy comes up to us and asks, hey, is surfing something boys can do too? So like the first representation he'd seen of surfing was women and girls. And now you have community leaders who are now surfers and surf coaches and fathers teaching their children and including their daughters. There we go. Yeah, I think I've already spoken more about my role, but here I just wanted to say how this has all evolved incredibly organically. So it's a very much a self-reflection, retrospective, reflexive process of looking back on how the process has evolved. So I didn't design it initially as a study. This was long before I knew anything about surf therapy. And it kind of just allowed me to be much more available to possibility and be led by participant needs and knowledge. I've written quite extensively then acknowledging my own position of privilege, bias, and multiple roles I play and how that influences, obviously, my work and interpretation. And also then my role in this kind of co-production of a surf space. So this transforming of a space that didn't exist before at the beach, and how that changes in relationships between space, gender, surfing bodies, opens up this space of possibility, what surf scholar Georgina Roy might refer to as a kind of social rupture. So a space that challenges existing social norms and relations, that creates opportunities for this alternative process of being. And that's really what we were exploring with Be Like Water, this alternative process of being. And it came about and was developed along with Shireen Garami, Iran's first female triathlete, who's been several times to Ramin to surf as well with us. And we kind of co-created them with minority groups of women and girls, born from a need to create this safe, supportive, and accepting space and environment, especially for local women and girls. So then going back to that class divide, we were trying to address this gap where there was there was a really positive uptake of surfing by women and girls. It was largely women traveling from urban areas. And there was this kind of exclusion of local women and ethnic Baluch women and girls, primarily because it's that the beach is just not a space that's normally accessible, and the water and sea is a place of fear. And so Be Like Water was born from as a way to how to make surfing more accessible and facilitate this greater body, self, nature connection, and kind of at the same time also in challenging more dominant modes of surfing practice that are focused on the mechanics or the technique, and really adopting a process whereby it was a much more embodied approach, especially because many of the women and girls who came may have experienced trauma. So creating this safe female-only space initially was really important. And we began with a private pool session, and really focusing on that feeling and relationship between body, breath, water, and waves in a very sensory way. And you can see here, I'm going to show you a series of just by the images alone, here is Fareshte and her daughter Farima, and then entering the sea, kind of arms outstretched, kind of wave hugging, one of the exercises. Yeah, and so just for the first time, just being in the pool together, supporting each other to be in the water, led to this kind of mentoring of women who were more experienced with swimming in water, and then women who had never had their bodies fully immersed in water, and then learning to breathe in the water, which helped release fears and anxieties, regulate the nervous system, this attunement to the body, and the breath, and just coming into contact with water and sharing our stories and experiences of water before going to the beach. And then at the beach, it was tuning into that environment, so turning what was an unfamiliar space into a more familiar one, with the skills to learn how to read the water and the waves. and taking very like a mindfulness based approach as well. And then before even introducing a surfboard into the mix, we kind of focused on wave play. So stripping it back to kind of that essence of what it's all about, of play and experiencing this, just how to move with waves, what it feels to resist, what it feels to surrender. And really the outcome of all of that then led to this huge, increase in confidence and improved skills when a surfboard was added into the mix. This wonderful sense of trust, so trust in the ocean, in our bodies, and in each other. So there's a real sense of collective empowerment, and it really challenged this dualistic notion of otherness or separateness, because you had a real social mix of women and girls participating. And I think this quote from Shireen captures that so beautifully of what the essence of it was, and what happens when we surrender to the playfulness of waves and wave riding, the beauty, and also celebrating this beauty in our differences. And so it really renewed this relationship with the environment, and with the ocean, and with each other. Yeah, and I just wanted to actually end, I think, with Foreshta's quote. Really sums it up for me. I asked her what the sea means to her, and she shared how it's purity. The sea is honest. It is truth without discrimination. It may be vicious, it may be calm, but it's always honest about how it is. So again, this creation of a space that allowed for that freedom of expression, to feel free of judgment, and to be able to show up fully as we are, who we are. And from there, so the Be Like Water program is that period of 2014 to 2016. And so I had the chance, because of this session, to catch up with what's happening with women surfing right now, and capturing these amazing voices. So I let them share. The first is Venus Balut. She's 9.5 years old, and she's being coached by her dad, and is going to be the next superstar in surfing. She'll share in Farsi first, and then I'll share a translation of her quote. So what's amazing there is, like, she was saying, well, how surfing means like this sense of play, but also how her biggest fear is fear of big waves. And there's this amazing photo of her on a very big wave, but also her hope for girls, that they can learn surfing and be champions for their country. Faria Manuri, 17 years old. I taught her to surf back in 2015 with her mum Foreshte, and she's a ISA Scholar recipient as well as Venus. And she had this to say.
We don't have a same base all the time, and we have to surrender to new experience. The surfing changed my life. It teaches me that life is not like a straight road, and sometimes it's rocky, sometimes it's a maze, but it's not stable, it's change. And I think we don't have a...
Okay. So I guess I realized, in the interest of time, how are we for time? Can you let me know?
I mean, we could listen to you all day, but another 30 minutes.
We want to go to
20,
Sri Lanka.
another 25 minutes.
Yeah. So just very quickly, and to share Shala Yassini, it's great to just catch up. She's one of the pioneers of surfing in Iran, and just sharing how every time she catches a wave, she feels more whole and fuller, and then being in the sea, it feels like it's a place without barriers. Mariam is a surf instructor and educator, who now teaches.
Hello, thanks for the opportunity to talk about gear surfing in Iran. I like to start how surfing changed my life. When I came to Ramin beach village, my goal was just learning how to surf and get a certificate. But surfing and the local people changed my life completely. very challenging for the girls to surf in my country, but I already overcame all the barriers and now I feel like stronger than before. I hope in the future there will be more equipment available with more support to encourage women to start surfing. I hope more women and girls start surfing and I'll be able to help them. And because I live in the nature outside the big city, I didn't feel the pandemic and I surfed as much as I could. Thanks.
So yeah, thanks from Mariam. She's kind of again highlighting the importance of having female instructors and that mentoring and leadership. So we'll maybe return to Shireen and the sea suit as a solution in the conclusions, but let's head to Sri Lanka and hear what's happening with women in surfing there, Martina.
Well, thank you, Easkey, for sharing your fascinating insights from Iran. And thanks for the opportunity to present some from Sri Lanka today. Let me just quickly see that I can share my screen myself for a moment.
Yeah.
Can you all see my screen now? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
So yeah, thanks for the opportunity again to present some insights from Sri Lanka today. I also really want to take the opportunity and thank to all the amazing people who have contributed to the rise of women surfing in the past few years. Special thanks goes to Amanda Prifty, my co-founder at Sea Sisters, and to Tiffany Caroffers, the co-founder of Girls Make Waves. And yeah, I want to say special thanks too also to the brave women of Arugan Bay that you can see on the photo here, who've been fighting for their right to go surfing. And also thanks to all our Sea Sisters, especially to Kalpa, Mahisha, and Sanu for contributing to this talk today. So I want to give you a quick overview about the current status of women surfing in Sri Lanka today, about the role of surfing and development or surf therapy organizations, and touch base on the barriers that Sri Lankan women are still facing in order to get into the waves, and talk a bit more about Sea Sisters. So thank you, Chris, for the introduction before. I'll just touch base on this quickly. So I'm originally from Austria and my background is in international development. And I first came to Sri Lanka in 2017 to conduct research for my thesis. And so I wrote my thesis about the potential of surfing for women's empowerment, doing a case study with the women from Sri Lanka. And indeed, I could learn a lot about the empowering effects that surfing had. But on the other hand, I also learned a lot about the disempowering effects that can happen. And I think it's equally important to shed lights also, not just on the empowerment, but also on the barriers that women are still facing. And then after graduating, I returned to Sri Lanka to co-initiate the Arugan Bay Girls Surf Club, which is the first female surf club in Sri Lanka. And it was actually amazing to see what kind of interest sparked on from the Arugan Bay Girls Surf Club. When we made it into the news, women from all over Sri Lanka were reaching out to us, being quite surprised that there is actually Sri Lankan women who surf. And they wrote us, hey, this is so cool. I want to learn how to surf as well. And that actually inspired Amanda and myself to found Sea Sisters as a follow-up. And so today I will speak both from my experiences as a researcher and from my experience as a practitioner. So in Sri Lanka, women surfing is still not a common sport for women, whereas the men have been surfing since probably about the 1960s. Women surfing is still quite a new development. So a lot of the women, in contrast to Iran, actually grew up in surf communities with their fathers, brothers, uncles, or cousins being engaged in surfing, but have never seen it as a place for themselves. However, the good news is this is really changing, and women start surfing from all over the country, from the capital Colombo to the south coast and to the east coast. Here you can see a picture of pioneering surfer Shamali Sanjaya, who has really become a role model for so many other girls to follow. And this whole movement has also been supported by so-called surfing and development organizations, which are kind of related to surf therapy organizations. And there are a couple of organizations that create specifically safe spaces for women to enjoy the ocean, such as Girls Make Waves. We then enabled the rise of the Aruga Bay Girl Surf Club on the East Coast. And on the South Coast, you have the Kids Surf Club Medawata that has a girls section as well, and Sea Sisters. And so these are quite exciting times with so many more women entering the surfing sphere. Well, this just went on by itself. But still, women are facing a lot of barriers. And these barriers are found on different levels: socio-cultural barriers, economic barriers, institutional ones. And what Easkey highlighted before when talking about intersectionality, like women face different barriers. So the barriers for a woman who would grow up in a small Sinhalese village might be really different to a woman who grew up in the capital or has a Tamil or Muslim background. And so now I would like to take you to a journey to Sri Lanka and let Sanu tell her story through her own voice.
My name is Sanu. I was born in Yaligama, a small fishing village down south in Sri Lanka. Along the south coast, surfing is everywhere. I see many foreign men and women. I have never seen a local girl surf. It is only men. I grew up surrounded by the ocean, but never saw it as a place for me. In the village, life is simple. It's a good life. But for girls, there are many expectations. They tell you to help at the house, study, get a job, marry, have children, stay mostly at home. They say Sri Lankan girls don't surf. But this is not really me. When I'm in the ocean, it's just me and the waves. I can hear my own voice. We are like waves. You cannot stop us. My name is
All right, yeah, so as you can see in the video, Sanu is finding her own voice in a sea full of expectations. And that's the same case for a lot of Sri Lankan girls who are facing a lot of cultural, gender-based expectations. And so when women start going against the norm, some people are appreciative about it and supportive, like Sanu's family. But what can also happen is that the woman will face resistance. Just facing some troubles. To go to the next slide. Right, here you go. All right, back on that. So yeah, here you can see a quote from the woman from Aruga Bay, from Mona, who says, "We will not stop surfing and our children will see, oh, my mom was surfing." So I think this really captures that the women do not let them stop by the resistance that we're facing, because actually, especially on the East Coast, the women were facing quite a lot of resistance that was related to jealousy, to the fear of a cultural change. But that's exactly what the women are often saying that they don't want. They do not want to change their culture. All they want is actually to go surfing. And in the past few years, I was definitely observable that the resistance got less. And even men who were against women surfing, like completely just a few years ago, are actually now supporting them in training to become surf instructors. So that's quite an amazing change of mindsets to see. I'm facing a bit troubles to go to the next slides. So here we are. Another barrier that women are facing in participating to surf is the fear and disconnection of the ocean. That's common for both men and women. So despite growing up on an island, most people have actually never learned how to swim because it's not taught at schools usually. So the ocean's usually not seen as a place of recreation, but more as a place of fear. Sri Lanka was highly affected by the tsunami in 2004 with a lot of people dying, and most of the death victims, 80%, were children and women. So a lot of women have a trauma from the ocean and are really scared. And as you can see on the photo here, most of our girls that join Sea Sisters for the first time have actually never even submerged their head underwater. But, and I guess this is what you all know about too, is that surfing can really help to overcome trauma. And with the experience with that as well, that step by step, the women start feeling more comfortable and connecting with the water and the ocean again. And another important barrier that Easkey has already highlighted in Iran too is there is a lack of female instructors in Sri Lanka. So there is not one single female surf instructor from Sri Lanka and just a handful of female swim instructors who usually live in a capital and who are not really available to teach swimming in rural areas on the coast. So this is what we actually do at Sea Sisters. So we use our privilege of having the skills of swimming and pass them on to the Sri Lankan women. And then our hope is that gradually they will build skills and can become instructors themselves and pass on these skills again. So it's really about changing the infrastructure to create long-term change and pass on these skills. So now I would like to tell a bit more about our organization, Sea Sisters. And I think this picture really captures the essence of what our program does. So we really have a playful approach in teaching how to swim and how to surf. And it's all about developing confidence, developing trust, and just providing a space for women just to be. I would say that our program is kind of related to surf therapy, even though we would probably more classify ourselves as a surfing and development organization. And the areas of change, so we want to contribute to women's empowerment, to ocean safety, and to environmental awareness. So we use surfing as a platform to educate about environmental issues and connect the women with the environment again. So here are some impressions from our program. And you see we have quite a bit of diversity of the girls. Our youngest one, you see on the left side up, it's Namadi. She's just 8 years old. Been the first time in the ocean ever with us. And on the bottom, you see Chamini, who's joining us with her daughter Situmi, and who really wants to tell every Sri Lankan woman just to go outside and have fun, and who became a role model in her community too, inspiring others to follow. And yeah, I think this is what Sea Sisters is all about. And what's also really great is the interest in a community. So in the 2 years that we're operating now, we've never faced any resistance, but actually quite a bit of demand of the girls. Like, we have a wait list, we can't even take all the girls that want to join us. So that's amazing to see, just the interest of the girls and the stoke that they have and pass on. And yeah, so for the future, we definitely want to focus more on local leadership. And I'm super grateful that we have amazing women working with us. And now for the end of the presentation, I want to introduce you to Kalpa and Mahisha and share their stories.
Ayubovan, Vanakkam. My name is Mahisha, and I'm a women's rights activist and lawyer from Sri Lanka. Living in an island, I've learned to swim since I was 4 and been in the ocean since I was 6. And since I was a kid, and when I was on holiday, I've only always seen tourists or local men surf. Is to always be quite amused and thrilled to see people surf. But it never occurred to me that I could learn surfing too. And it was not until about 2-3 years ago that I in fact learned to surf. Surfing to me is a meditative sport. Because I live in the city, quite often we tend to get trapped in the hectic and crazy schedules of the city life. And surfing is my escape from the buzz. It teaches me to relax, unwind, and enjoy the little things in front of me, like the sea, the sun, and the sand. And it was even more empowering when I joined Sea Sisters to be with a community of women who are being empowered and who have the passion and the enthusiasm and energy to keep surfing and to break the barriers for allowing women to surf.
Yeah, I think this is a beautiful quote from Mahisha, who lives in Colombo, and she really is our hero because every single weekend, Mahisha jumps in the middle of the night on a bus and drives for a couple of hours to the South Coast to join us as a volunteer at our Sea Sisters lessons. And finally, I want to give you some insights from Kalpa. Kalpa is our operations manager at Sea Sisters, and she's always surprising us with her wisdom and emotional speeches at our lessons. And yeah, so here are some words from
First,
Kalpa.
I would like to say what does surfing mean to me and how it has changed my life. Surfing is one of the best and happiest experience I ever tried. Before I used to stay locked inside, but with surfing, it helps me to connect with nature, and also it has helped me to increase my level of self-confidence. When it's come to the barriers I still face, I have two major barriers. First one is I still have fear of big waves and fear of ocean, and also I'm a little bit struggling with my pop-ups. So I want to overcome these barriers and I want to become a good surfer. And then in Sri Lanka, women and girls, they don't surf like other countries. It is not so common. I think the reason is lack of awareness, but with the time, I hope there will be more girls and women will be surf in the ocean. So that is my hope. I hope that one day there will be more. First, I would like to say what does
So yeah, these were some insights from Sri Lanka. Thanks Kalpa and Mahisha for contributing these beautiful videos. And now I would like to bring the experiences from Sri Lanka together with the insights we could get from Easkey from Iran and come up with some conclusions. So in today's presentation, our guiding question is how might we restore the ocean as a more inclusive space for girls and women? And I hope that we could show you that, but it's so important to address the barriers and vulnerabilities, because only when we identify them, we can change unsafe spaces of fear and exclusion into safe spaces of inclusion and empowerment. So here are some of our key enabling factors that we have identified. And this list is by no means complete, but it's quite consistent with some other findings of studies about women in sports. So one of the most important factors that enable girls to learn how to surf is the support of their families and community. So for some girls, for example, in Sri Lanka, they need the consent of their families to participate in a sport. So we really have to consider that relational dimension as well, and to get the support of the families or change mindsets. Another key enabling factor are female-centered practices. So what we both were saying, to have females-only spaces where the women can feel comfortable and safe, to have female instructors, and to have appropriate clothing for the woman to feel comfortable too. And then another key enabling factor is the group factor, because if just one woman goes against the norm, she might receive a lot of backlash. But if the women are together, people are way less likely to say something against them, and together they are strong and can fight for their rights and even contribute to a structural change through their collective power. So overall, the freedom to surf is influenced by social structures and norms. So for us, that's always really important to consider. To contribute to change, we also have to influence these norms and structures to really make a long-term change. And so surfing sites are gendered and contested spaces that differ across cultures. And so it's really important to acknowledge that women are not just like one group of women. There's women with different needs, from different cultures. And so we have to challenge our assumptions and stereotypes. One way how we can do that is through cross-cultural collaborations. So they're a way to help us to foster best practice and to overcome cultural misunderstandings, such as the male gaze or othering processes or stereotypes. And so one example how a collaboration like this could look like is, so we actually brought the Iranian surfer and the Sri Lankan surfer woman together last year. And it was amazing how impactful it was, not to share waves, but to share their stories of what it means to be a woman who surfs. And that has a long-term effect on the girls for sure. And another collaboration or example is the sea suit that has been tested in different areas around the world and sparked in really important conversations around inclusion. And I guess that's what it's really about, that we spark on more of this conversation and talk about it to overcome these barriers. And so now I would like to pass on to Easkey again for the final conclusion.
Yeah, I actually think that sums it up so beautifully. So I'm gonna leave it there and see if we've got time for a few questions and answers. Maybe just the next slide, Martina, to end on, just captures the essence of, I suppose, why we all do what we do. I don't know if I can't click the slide, maybe if you can.
Yeah, sometimes my slides don't move. I had that struggle before.
And then
like,
I think we can share the slideshow because we also have included a bibliography of all the work we've drawn upon in our own work, as well as different links to what we do in practice. But yeah, this real need that's come out of the work that we do for this intimate contact with the sea for all of us, and that leads to this care and value in each other and in the ocean, our ocean planet. So there's fantastic work being done on this in so many levels. So thank you. I think if we end the slideshow and open it up for a few minutes, 5 minutes, for anyone who's keen to have a bit of dialogue.
Ladies, that was fabulous. Easkey, do you have access, if you cursor to the bottom, to the Q&A? Or maybe Martina does?
Yes.
Because as panelists,
yeah, we've got lots of questions.
Yeah.
I've been tracking a few of them. Yeah, let's.
Can you see
if you end the slideshow, Martina, we can see each other.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, so there's a few. I'm curious. Okay. I've just made a note of a few, and I'll throw them out, Martina, and we can have a go at it. There's one question from Rob around this idea of societal pushback. In Sri Lanka, did you come up against that? And if so, how did you address that? And did you come up with any sort of creative political moves, especially in the context of, I suppose, Sri Lanka, where women's positions are seen as in the home and not in the space that you've created with Sea Sisters?
Mm-hmm. So as said before, of Sea Sisters, we actually didn't face a lot of resistance, but on the East Coast in Ribbon Bay, the situation looked quite different. Whereas the situation really has changed, and more people, especially men, start to get more supportive around women surfing. So there's actually two examples for kind of creative factors that supported that. So one is that the tourism board first wasn't really a supporter of women surfing, has now discovered that there is actually a need from female tourists to have female local instructors that they can take surf lessons on. So now actually the Surf Tourism Board has an interest that women start learning how to surf, and they actually actively support them to become instructors. So that maybe wasn't because of the sake for women's empowerment that sparked that on, but they're now all like extremely supportive about women surfing. Mm. And then another example that shows how these like external factors can influence is that since surfing has been announced to be an Olympic sport, Sri Lanka is really professionalizing. So there is now a surfing federation in Sri Lanka, there are national competitions, and they start to get a national team ready. And so now they found out, oh, there is no local women on the national team, but they would actually need one for the Olympics. So now all the local surfers too are like really keen. And I think that a lot of the local men have been like supportive, like the local men surfer, about women to surf. but they were like not really speaking up for them actively, because maybe they, I don't know, for whatever reasons, but now they actually do active, and that gives them like almost a good excuse to tell in front of their families, look, it's important that my sister serves, even though she might goes against the norms, but that's important because that means we can participate in the Olympics, or it just gives more arguments. So yeah, these might be some creative examples that helped.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Is it basically everything you're saying is really mirrored in the same very similar ways to what's happening in Iran, and how surfing has got established there and recognized, with a national governing body within the space of a handful of years, and the influence of these international policies like the Olympics around gender equality and having equal representation is really interesting. Is Iran actually sent a mixed sports team to the Asian Games, a surf team of men and women who participated. So that's really interesting to see the influence of that. Another question then, I think we've kind of answered around from Phil, is around, do any of our programs focus on men, and in particular what passive or active roles men could play to support your program goals? And I would definitely say that, at least certainly my experience in Iran, it's hugely important that to consider the context of what we're talking about is this real relational dimension of the family dynamics of the role of men and women and girls' lives has a huge influence, and the difference when there's that support there, like as you've seen with, say, Venus, the 9-year-old up and coming surf star, with her father actively coaching her, and then she's now this sort of role model for other young Baluchi girls. Do you want to say anything further on that, Martina?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you 100%. So when thinking about empowerment, it's just so important not to think about empowerment in the terms of increasing self-confidence and speaking up for yourself. You also need this relational empowerment. That's exactly what you said, is about family decision structures, having the support of your husband to actually really have change. So it definitely, the men play a key role in creating access, in facilitating gender equality. Like without men, I mean, they're just super important. So in our programs, we don't actively work with men, but definitely like we try to speak with them and facilitate that mind shift, which is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, amazing. I think we have time for one more question. So related to that is, there's a few similar ones, but Marika's, if I'm saying that right, is this kind of a question around how to engage women and girls where they're like less visible, especially in communities where it's, they're not commonly able to access the beach. And so do you want to speak to that, maybe with Sea Sisters, how you've had such a huge uptick, but maybe earlier on with the groundwork was laid with Aragon Bay Girls Surf Club, but how, and I'll address it as well, but how do you reach women and girls who are more excluded?
It's a quite big question, and unfortunately there are still girls that are still excluded from surfing. So far, I don't know of any Muslim woman from Sri Lanka surfing. But I think the key factor is establishing trust. So that was when Tiffany started Girls Make Waves, for the first time introduced a girl surf program in Sri Lanka. She really made connections with the families for a couple of years and has established trust, that the families have trusted her, that she will take care of their daughters, and this is something beneficial for their daughters. So I think that's probably the most important one, is to establish trust and to lead by example, and to show that it's not about changing a culture, it's more to do something within the culture. And it's just surfing. It doesn't mean that the girls will change and become someone different, or like chase Western standards. Like that's not the case. And I think when this message is communicated, that it can enable girls to participate.
Yeah, I just second everything you said, and trust, that's so key, and it's definitely what we've experienced that over time building up those relationships in Iran and in the communities. And I guess just as you spoke to about with the cultural aspects, like meeting people where they're at, and then over time also role models develop, and mentoring, it happens like between women as well, which makes it also more accessible. So there is always going to be those trailblazers and gatekeepers that are necessary, and then through that, then you can develop more of the mentoring. And the other thing is, in particular for not exclusively, but especially for Muslim women and girls, is definitely this access to, performance sportswear, surfwear that's functional, and that really, helps with that accessibility as well. So that's an interesting one too, where women are now kind of collaborating to co-design kind of solutions around the clothing as well to address the diversity of women who surf. Okay, guys. So I think, whoa, we almost nailed it on time. Just after 9.
Hi, ladies. Wow, that was so powerful, so impactful. I'm going to ask another favor, because this is what I do. Any questions we didn't get to, would it be okay if I email you and get your responses in writing? And then I can share it with the entire sector. Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we still have some participants on here. I want to let them know the video Into the Sea is on the Whova app under agenda. Go to this session and click on recorded videos. You don't want to miss it. It's lovely.
That one is that video clip is about the sea suit that we made. And then also
another one, Into
the
the Sea.
documentary on the origin story. But yeah.
Okay, well, as Easkey mentioned, she and Martina are going to share that beautiful presentation with me. So I promise the sector will get that. Gosh, ladies, we had 5, including, of course, you, all women-led panels this year. And I wanted to share this with you because yesterday we were discussing how women should be in the room where it happens or invited to the table. And Tamala Lewis just sort of left us with this. She said, and if you're not invited, then build your own room and build it bigger and make your own table and make it longer and then invite everyone to both. And I just knew you two would dig that because it is exactly what you are striving for in the entire universe. So on behalf of the ISTO board and the entire surf therapy sector and the 80+ participants that started out with us today, thank you so much for wrapping up this 2-day symposium. Not enough thank yous, but so grateful.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Yeah, you guys are great. Thanks so much. It was beautiful. And I'll be in touch over email. As for the participants, head over to the last little party wave session and then we're out. Easkey, Martina, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. Thanks, Martina. Thanks, Chris.
Brilliant.
Thanks everyone for hanging in.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.